There it is. Whoa. What's going on? Can you hear me? So who here has been to the Grand Canyon? Oh, awesome. Who hasn't been to the Grand Canyon? What? I am shocked by your behavior. No, that's okay. Hopefully we'll all learn a lot today and have a lot of fun. Anywho, so let me turn. I got a little blinky light. Oh, look, it's got a whole thing just for this. Anyway, let's get started. Okay. Okay, so I cannot start my presentation about Grand Canyon without making an acknowledgement that people have lived in and around the Grand Canyon for over 12,000 years. And those people were forcibly moved, murdered, their whole lives and ways of life taken away. And the result is I can go have a fun time and look at some pretty rocks. But it's just really important to approach the Grand Canyon with a lot of respect. Because people have been there, it is sacred ground. It feels sacred to me. But anyway, I wanted to start off talking about that. I first connected with the Grand Canyon when I was just a wee person of maybe 5 or 6, like I am in this picture. My grandparents took me on a road trip to the Grand Canyon, and from that point on, I was like, oh my God, I gotta go back. That place is really cool. I want to go inside. I was too scared before. So I had that opportunity in October of 2021. Okay. In October of 2021, I had just turned 40, and I left my family for 9 days, and I drove 4,629 miles, give or take, and I had this amazing adventure and spent 3 nights below the canyon, and it was pretty amazing. So, that brings us up to today. What are we going to talk about? Okay, I'm glad you asked. Geography. Yeah. Geology, because water, just a little bit about water, and some backpacking. So, let's get started. Geography. The Grand Canyon is located in northwestern Arizona. To kind of get you familiarized with the canyon, if you don't already know, there are 2 rims to the canyon. There's the north rim here and the south rim here, and the Colorado River goes all the way through there. So there's kind of set, yeah. Anyway. The river is 278 miles long. The average canyon width is 10 miles, but it is 18 miles at its widest point and 600 feet at its most narrow. Depth is about a mile, which is equivalent to about 3.5 Empire State Buildings. So kind of keep that in mind if you're going all the way to the bottom. The north rim's elevation is actually higher than the south rim's elevation, and they're both slightly tipped to the south. And this becomes really important when we talk about water a little later on. It is the second most attended national park in the country. Let's see, this last year there were 4,732,000 folks who visited the Grand Canyon. So it is a popular place with lots of people. Let's talk about some rocks. Yeah, you want to? I love rocks. I do have a degree in geology, and I was a field geologist for several years. Rocks are my happy place, they tell the whole story of the Earth. And that's pretty rad, right? So Ross tells the story of our planet. Well, what's the story of the Grand Canyon? Well, no, they tell the story of our planet. So we've got some sedimentary rocks here, and sedimentary rocks are deposited in different environmental environments. So you've got, up here you've got some coconino sandstone, and that was deposited in like a desert. So you have all this like wind-blown sediments, then a lot of cross-cutting in the rocks. And here you have the red wall limestone, so that's a dead bug city, right? So limestone is just dead bugs that float in mud that floats to the bottom of the ocean and then gets liquefied. And then you have shale, and shale is extra muddy mud with not as much stuff in it. We also have igneous rocks, and these make up the core, the bottommost part of the canyon. And these are anything with magma or lava. Lava is just magma that came out. That's the difference. Metamorphic is when things get squished. So any kind of rock gets like pushed together a little bit. There's like heat and pressure, but not enough heat and pressure to actually melt it. Because if it's melted, it becomes an igneous rock, and it is like becomes magma at that point. So just like squishy bits. And so that's the inner core, and the rest of the Grand Canyon is sedimentary rocks. So what is the story of the Grand Canyon? Well, again, that you asked, you have the best questions. Anyway, so about 2 to 1.7 billion years ago, the southernmost boundary of North America was actually up by Utah and southern Wyoming. But there's stuff now, we have Texas and whatnot now, so how did that get there? Well, I'll tell you, it went boom, boom, yeah, and plate tectonics drove a bunch of volcanic islands, and like basically the two plates collided and the islands got scraped off onto the North American plate. And when that happened, they accreted and became the igneous metamorphic basement rocks that we know and love today. Oh, and there's erosion. But then what happens? Well, from 1.7 billion to 560 million years ago, it gets tricky. But we don't know now. There's a bunch of time that's missing. There aren't a lot of rocks for us to know what happened. There's lots of ideas, but nobody knows for certain. But what we do have is the great unconformity. So right there, my friends, no, get back. Right there, that is a gap of 1.1 billion years. Billion. The Earth is only 4.5 to 4.6 billion years old, and we don't know what happened there. I think that's pretty cool that you can put your hand on it. So then, what happened? From 560 million years to 250 million years ago, we've got some oceans, and they're rising. And they're falling, and they're rising, and they're falling. And when they're doing this, they're leaving their deposits. And so we've got those limestones, and those shales, and those sandstones. And this is what happens where we have our fun guys that pointed out earlier. But guess what? They were all deposited at sea level. So the Grand Canyon's at like 8,000 feet. How did we get up there then? Dun, dun, dun. 70 to 50 million years ago, we get the rise of the Colorado Plateau, a story of seduction and erotiony. That's right. Subduction is when one plate slides under another plate. And orogeny is mountain building. So what basically would happen is you have this fair long plate, and it's subducted underneath the North American plate, and that's when we get the Rocky Mountains, and a little bit later, we get the rise of the Colorado Plateau. What's really cool about the rise of the Colorado Plateau is that it was really gentle. So it was lifted in such a way that all of our nice layers are intact. Like if you look at the Rocky Mountains, the flat irons you see there, that are right there on the front of the Rocky Mountain range, these are formerly horizontal layers. They were like, hey, guess what? We're just sediment that was liquefied and we used to be part of the ancestral Rockies. So how do you like that? Oh, we're really cool. And then all of a sudden this weird hydrology happens. It goes, and these sediments are like, ah! And some of them even get overturned, which is like insult to injury, right? So basically, our Colorado Plateau was lifted up gently, so we have these beautiful layers, and so that's really cool about it. But what happened then? We don't have a river yet to like make the canyon. So 5 million years ago, 5 million, that is no time in geologic time. 5 million out of the overall 2 billion years of history that we have there at the Grand Canyon is 0.25% of that time. It's nothing. It's just like it happened yesterday in geologic time. So we have the downcutting of the Colorado River. So around 5 to 6 million years ago, the Colorado River began its current course. It was a steep gradient because it's starting up here in the Rockies at about 14,000 feet. And it's picking up sediment along the way, and it hits these like really beautiful, soft sedimentary layers, and it just goes, and it cuts through it like liquid sandpaper. So it's really, the story of the Grand Canyon is old rocks, but it's a young canyon. You think? The end. No, it's not the end. Geologic processes that made all of this happen are still happening today. It's just that we've been here for like a nanosecond and we can't see them as quickly. So these processes continue to evolve, and we are currently, it's called the Anthropocene, I believe. And it's basically a geological era where people are making weird things happen to rocks. And we were like, oh, look, that's what people did. Anyway. Let's talk about water! Yay! You didn't sound that excited. Thank you. Okay, so I told you just a second ago that the northern elevation and the southern elevation are like that. Well, then they're tipping to the south. And this is important for the water resources on the Grand Canyon. Because when it rains on the Grand Canyon, the water hits on the north rim and flows into the canyon. But if it hits on the south rim, it starts to flow away. So water flow is very generally, don't tell the hydrologist they said this, but like that way. But what this means for water resources of the Grand Canyon is that all of the water that people drink within the park comes from Roaring Springs. It is located on the north rim of the Grand Canyon. It is, I think, the 4th largest spring within the park, and it produces about 1 million gallons of water per day for people, and it all comes from Roaring Springs. Like maybe it's a little tiny bit that comes from other places, but 99.9% of the water that everyone drinks. So that's 4 million that come every year, all that water that they utilize comes from this one awesome spring. It gets piped up to the top of the North Rim. It also gets piped down via the Trans-Canyon water pipeline to the South Rim. It goes across the Colorado River, underneath this bridge. This is the Silver Bridge. And it doesn't go under the river, it just goes over the river. And then it goes up, around, up some more until it gets to the top. But this is a very old system. It was put in the 1960s and 70s, and it is antiquated. It had planned obsolescence in around 2000, was when it was supposed to be like Togocan. When it's supposed to be dead. And so it's really kind of past its prime, and they have about 30 breaks per year, which is why it's so important to make sure that you bring your own water to the Grand Canyon if you go into the canyon, or a way to filter water if you find yourself without water. Let's talk about backpacking. Okay, so 85% of people go to the South Rim of the Grand Canyon. The North Rim is awesome, it's beautiful. I'm sure it's beautiful, but there's not as much stuff over there. So 85% of people do come to the South Rim of the canyon, and there are all sorts of things to do. There's trails, there's things to see. You don't need to go into the canyon to have a good time. But if you do want to have a good time in the canyon, there's so many trails in the Grand Canyon, but the three main trails that people utilize are the North Tagong, South Tagong, and the Bright Angel Trail. So this is North Rim over here. Let's see, there's our river, and South Rim is over here. There are also three campgrounds: the Cottonwood, the Bright Angel, and the Havasupai Gardens, which luckily they did recently rename what they used to be called Indian Gardens to Havasupai Gardens. And honestly, I think they should do more of that because they just should. Anyway, so if people want to do day hikes, that's totally awesome. You can, you can go in this green area is like, you could probably like go down and come back up. But wherever you have, when you go down, you do have to come back up. That's not an option. And they don't, there's not, you can't really, you can't, like helicopters don't really like to go in there unless it's really bad. You can't jump on a mule. No one's gonna give up their mule for you. You're gonna have to get back out yourself. So you have to know your level of fitness and agility, and to know like how far you should go down. But some people do these like rim to rim runs, and those people are amazing. But that is nuts. They're like jumping around like mountain goats. They're really spry and light, and they run a ton. So rim to rim is over 20 miles. Rim to rim, which is something that people also do in one day, is over 40 miles. It's nuts. So if you want to be out past dark underneath the rim of the canyon, or if you want to go camping, you're going to need a backcountry permit. To get a backcountry permit, you have to enter a lottery. It is, you have to apply like 5 months ahead of time. There's a 10-day window, 5 months ahead of time. And this is a chart that shows the acceptance rate or the success rate for people of the year that I went. And I went in October, And as you can see, the success rate was less than 30% of all the people who applied for permits. So I was super, super, super lucky. You can also see from this chart the most popular time in the canyon, which is not insanely hot and not insanely cold. So this is a really good time to go to the canyon. This is the thing that I made for myself because I am in fact a nerd. That is an elevation profile with my itinerary for my trip. I went down the South Kaibab Trail and spent 2 nights at the bottom of the canyon, and then hiked up the Havasupai Gardens, spent a night there, and then went out on the Grand Angel Trail the next day. What's really cool about the South Kaibab and Grand Angel Trails is that the South Kaibab Trail, you hike along a ridge. And then when you're going up the Grand Angel Trail, you're going up a canyon. So it's 2 very different experiences, which are pretty cool. You can see here, so going down, you're like, hey, blah, 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 and then you can kind of see the trail there. It goes down that cliff. And then here, I'm like, it's super steep and scary in places. South Kaibab doesn't have any water. No water on South Kaibab. There's no place to fill your water bottle. You have to take everything with you. Grand Angel does have several places to get water, but some of them will close in winter, and sometimes the lines break. So again, watch out for your water. At the beginning of all the trails is this lovely picture of a man. I can't decide what he's doing. I'm guessing puking, but I like to imagine that he's like doing some sort of art or something. Anyway, going into the canyon is a big deal, and you need to be prepared to go in there because it can be really flippin' hot. Phantom Ranch at the bottom of the canyon is on average 20 degrees hotter than whatever it is at the rim. So it's 100 degrees at the rim, it's 120 at Phantom Ranch, and the rocks just radiate the heat back at you, and there's no wind at that time. So it's not pleasant, and not for the faint of heart, and not for the underhydrated. It's also strenuous and treacherous. This is the beginning of the South Kaibab Trail. It's called the Chimney. This is an aerial view of that same trail part. So it's real steep and like cliffy. So people do unfortunately fall. People unfortunately pass away in the Grand Canyon every year. On average, 15 people die every year in the canyon, and it's kind of a mix between environmental factors and drowning and falling and things like that. But the most, the highest percentage is up here, airplane and helicopter crashes. In 1956, there were actually 2 jetliners that crashed in mid-air over the Grand Canyon. And that nobody survived, and it seems that for some reason the picture of that is just really horrifying to me. Anyway, so there are good reasons to stay safe at the Grand Canyon. There are risks. Okay, so make sure you pay attention. If you're taking selfies, don't just be mindful of where you're stepping and where you're standing. You don't want to fall off. Make sure that you have what you need and you can handle what you need. My pack was maybe 25 pounds with water, and water weighs 8 pounds per gallon, and that's about the amount of water that I would be carrying. So just making sure that you have shelter and water and everything that you need in case you have an issue. Stay hydrated. Also, don't overhydrate because that's a big problem. A lot of people have, I think it's called hyponatremia, where there is an imbalance of electrolytes because you kind of flood your system with too much water, and then things don't work, and you fall over, and it's not good. So make sure to take some electrolyte tablets, eat salty snacks. Also, the campgrounds are super smart. So they're flat, they are picturesque, they have toilets, there's usually water, always a benefit. This is a little story called I was taking a nap on top of a picnic table at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, because that's what I was doing that day. Anyway, so I was lying there, and I heard this rustling, and I was like, what the hell, okay. And then I went back down to take the nap, and I was like, more rustling. I was like, what the heck? And then I hear a little bit more rustling, and I feel like this super gentle pinch on my finger, and like a little lick, like little teeth, and a little lick. And it was, of course, a little squirrel. And he's so cute. He was a really good squirrel, and he ran away, and he did what he was supposed to do in that situation. Unfortunately, squirrels are the most vicious, like they're the worst animals in the park. Like they're the most dangerous ones. I read that our rangers think that they like come together in colonies and will like actually work together to attack people and get their stuff. They also like chew through bags really badly. So when you're at the park, you've got this sturdy pole, and what you need to do is put your bag up there and then dump all the stuff in your bag into your anti-critter boxes, and then you need to make sure that you leave your bag completely open, because if it's zipped up, they're like, oh, what are you hiding? I know you got something for me, and then they'll like and get in there, and then your bag is all messed up. Anyway, so squirrels are one of the things that I saw at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Also, ravens. And they're amazing. They're incredibly smart, and they will steal your shit so bad. They will do the same thing with your bag. I saw a raven steal a guy's full, like, downside Ziploc full of, like, granola and stuff, and fly it over the creek, and then he and his friends were, like, down to Chowtown. So you have to keep an eye on stuff, otherwise forget it. There's also these guys. They're very, very cute. They are called ringtail cats. They're not cats, they're in raccoon family. And I saw one, and then you never see them. And I saw one, I was so happy. The other animal that is at the bottom of the canyon that you want to watch out for, rattlesnakes. There's 9 different varieties of rattlesnakes in the Grand Canyon, but the Grand Canyon rattlesnake is only located in the Grand Canyon. And guess what? It's kind of pink and kind of peach, which helps it like kind of blend in with the rocks. This is nightmare fuel for me. Here's the snake, and it just blends in. So, tra-la-la, watch out for snakes. Phantom Ranch is at the bottom of the canyon. I know I'm running out of time, so I'll hurry through this. Phantom Ranch is it's a place at the bottom of the canyon. It was built in 1922. You can sleep down there if you want, but you do have to join the lottery, and it is a 15-month ahead of time lottery to get into one of these sweet bunkhouses. They also have amazing lemonade that costs like $2 to keep your cup. It's only $1 to get a refill, and I think that it probably is not the best lemonade, but you're so tired, you're so hot, you're so happy that you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. They also have a lot of food down there, so they have steak dinner every night, they have like stew, you get like breakfast, like a sack lunch. Honestly, people were trying to give away stuff because they didn't want to carry it back up the canyon, because you can't throw anything away in the canyon. You gotta take it with you. So this is a little part I like to call stuff.